It's been a few weeks since I spoke about the war in Gaza, which has been raging since October 7th, 2023. That day, Hamas slaughtered more than 1,200 men, women, and children, including 46 Americans and citizens of more than 30 countries. The largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Girls and women were sexually assaulted. The depravity of Hamas's crimes is almost unspeakable. They also took 254 people hostage that day, including 12 Americans. The situation remains horrific. Hamas still has 49 hostages, 45 Israeli citizens, 4 foreign nationals. Hamas refuses to return the bodies of 28 dead hostages. Hamas refuses to relinquish power and accept Israel's right to exist. Caught in the middle are the people in Gaza. The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says more than 58,000 have been killed in the fighting and that thousands are starving. The real story? There is no question. Innocent people, including children, are dying in Gaza. People are hungry. It's at the point that some people are probably starving to death. The Gaza Strip is an absolute disaster area. We have no way to verify the death toll. Hamas does not differentiate between civilians and militants. We can't believe anything Hamas says about the number of people killed or the risk of starvation. Why? Local Gazan reporters are being threatened, assaulted, and intimidated by Hamas. The head of the Palestinian journalist syndicate, Nasser Abu Bakr, says Hamas targets journalists with summonses, interrogations, phone calls, threats, beatings, and arrest, publication bans, interference with content, and surveillance. Reporter Mohammed Abu Akwan says he was beaten by Hamas internal security forces in 2024 while interviewing a woman in central Gaza. Why? Because the woman insulted Hamas and some of its leaders. Another journalist told the Washington Post they feared that covering demonstrations would lead Hamas to accuse them of spying for Israel. And those not reporting with a gun to their head are actual members of Hamas. April 2025, Israel said it killed Al Jazeera journalist Hussam Sabat, who was a sniper terrorist for Hamas. This wasn't just some reporter, it was a sniper terrorist. January, an IDF airstrike killed a Hamas deputy commander and a co-worker who were moonlighting as videographers for Al Jazeera. December 2024, the IDF released evidence that the men killed in a press van were Hamas operatives. Last June, Israeli forces killed a Hamas-affiliated journalist who was holding 3 Israeli hostages abducted on October 7th. So what's the point? We don't know what's really happening in Gaza, leaving much of the media to speculate to support its narrative. All which brings us to today's headlines. Foreign news organizations to Israel allow journalists to enter Gaza. AFP, AP, Reuters, and the BBC urge Israel to allow access to Gaza. BBC and news agencies warn that journalists in Gaza are at risk of starvation. That was the BBC reporting on the BBC. Here's the deal. Joint statements from AFP, AP, BBC News, and Reuters. They are urging Israel to allow journalists to enter and exit Gaza. The IDF has not allowed international journalists open access to Gaza. Now, there are legitimate reasons for this. They don't want them to die. So news organizations have been relying on local journalists in Gaza, the same journalists who are threatened by Hamas and who are part of Hamas. Of course, that's not how the statement reads. Here's the entire statement. Quote, "We are desperately concerned for our journalists in Gaza, who are increasingly unable to feed themselves and their families. For many months, these independent journalists have been the world's eyes and ears on the ground in Gaza. They are now facing the same dire circumstances as those they are covering. Journalists endure many deprivations and hardships in war zones. We are deeply alarmed that the threat of starvation is now one of them." That's a second quote. "We once again urge the Israeli authorities to allow journalists in and out of Gaza. It is essential that adequate food supplies reach the people there. Now, look, I'm a staunch supporter of Israel and fair, fact-based journalism. The two are not mutually independent. Let's look at this with common sense. For the most part, foreign press has not been allowed in Gaza. When they are, it's with the IDF, which decides what they see and what they don't see. In fact, just last week, the IDF took the Wall Street Journal to a food distribution site in Gaza. There was clearly no censorship, and here are the Wall Street Journal headlines. Children starve in Gaza as hunger crisis deepens. Why Israel's chaotic new food program in Gaza has turned so deadly. Do you think Hamas would ever allow such unbiased reporting? Israeli media also would like more access to Gaza. The Times of Israel editor David Horowitz made the case for independent journalism inside the Gaza Strip.
I understand why the IDF does what it does and why the government is not pressing for a change in that. I think there's a concern that if you let reporters semi-freely even operate in Gaza, you risk their lives. They may be prepared to take that risk, but Israel does not want to be held responsible. But I have to say, as a journalist, it is our obligation to try and tell people what is going on and to show them what is going on, and we're not able to do so. So when you say foreign press, and you did include Israeli press should be allowed into Gaza in frameworks that maximize their safety and capacity to report. It's very complicated. I'm not indifferent to the complexities.
Now, I agree with David. It is complicated, but we need to get the real story directly from Gaza. It's a war. It's ugly. Some liberals will find more reasons to hate Israel, but they already think the worst of Israel. They already believe the lies. So let them see the truth about Hamas, how they steal from their own people, how they spew hate, how they threaten journalists, how they are prolonging a war and putting women and children on the firing line. Journalists are willing to take the risk. The IDF needs to let them and let the world see the real story in Gaza. Look, does it really matter what the precise death count is? It's horrific. Is it 58,000 or is that double what it actually is? If the real death count is half that, it is still terrible. It is still horrible. This does need to end, and the one sure way for this to end is for Hamas to surrender or vacate the Gaza Strip. They invaded Israel. Some say it was the oppressed pushing back. I disagree with that. You make up your own mind. Be a critical thinker. Look at it through your own eyes. They absolutely knew Israel would strike back when they did what they did. They knew when they came through that fence, when they invaded the kibbutz, when they killed the infants in their cribs, when they raped and murdered the women and young girls. They knew what Israel would do. When they went back across the fence and hid among the civilians, they knew they were bringing hellfire down on those civilians. And that is exactly what has happened and continues to happen and will happen until Hamas gets out of the Gaza Strip. People say this needs to stop. They get out, this will stop. When they get out, and it can safely happen, Israel will swarm the Gazans with food and medical aid and everything they can to restore them to health and some quality of life. Why are people not calling for that to happen? Hamas is a terrorist group. Why are they not calling for them to get out of the Gaza Strip and stop this suffering? They continue to attack Israel, and Israel continues to retaliate. If Hamas gets out of the Gaza Strip, this will stop instantly, and aid will come in a tidal wave. This will happen. What is the real story? People are dying and probably starving. Open this up to international peacekeepers. Get rid of Hamas. Get rid of Hamas. Get rid of Hamas. And the suffering will stop overnight. I believe that's the real story. You make up your own mind. Wherever you're getting the real story, make sure you subscribe and follow. I'll see you tomorrow. Whether it's talk of a Nobel Peace Prize or fears of World War III, one thing's certain: uncertainty rules the day. And when the world feels this unstable, your finances are on the line. If Iran blocks the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices could skyrocket just like the 1970s. That triggered inflation, gas shortages, and a weakening dollar. Wall Street's already tense. Goldman Sachs sees sustained recession risk, and JP Morgan warns of a potential oil shock. Add in $36 trillion in national debt, and the financial pressure is real. This isn't hype, it's a wake-up call. The time to act is now. That's why I trust Preserve Gold. When the world turns unstable, smart folks turn to gold and silver. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free precious metals guide from Preserve Gold. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver with a qualified purchase. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 today.